Welcome to the session on Java OOPS interview questions. In this section, we are going to look at what are all the most important questions which are asked in the interviews. The responses to the interview questions will be verbatim how a student has to answer in the interview. This is not a session where we are going to go into the details of explanation for a particular question, but verbatim however that question has to be answered in the interview will be the focus of this video. Let's get on with the first question. What is the difference between a class and an object? Class is a blueprint and object is an instance of a class. For a single class would be there could be multiple objects which can be created based on that particular class template. For example, if you have a blueprint of a house, you can build as many houses as you want based on the blueprint. Similar to that, with a particular class, you can create as many objects as you want. Question. What is a constructor? Constructor is used to initialize an object. For example, if we are looking at a student constructor, whenever a student object is created, the default values for the student have to be initialized. Constructor is a method. A constructor is used to initialize the default values. A constructor does not have a return type and constructor has the same name as the class name. What are the types of constructors? Java supports three types of constructors. One is default constructor, second is parameterized constructor, and third is copy constructor. A default constructor does not have any parameters. It's used to initialize the objects to the default value. Second is parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor has parameters in it. So when the object is created, at that time when parameters are passed, the parameterized constructor is called and the class instance variables are initialized based on the values passed in the parameters. Third is copy constructor. Copy constructor is used to create an object or initialize an object based on the values in another object. For this, an object reference is passed as a parameter to the constructor. The class instance variables are initialized based on the object reference which has been passed as a parameter. Does Java support static constructor? Quick answer is no. The reason is whenever a method is declared as static, it belongs to the class and it is not to the object. So constructor and static are actually, if you look at it, opposite to each other. Constructor is for an object and not for a class. What is constructor chaining? Let's look at a case of multi-level inheritance where there is a parent class to which there is a child class to which there is a child class. If a constructor of the grandchild is called, it automatically calls the parent class's constructor, which in turn calls its parent class's constructor. This is called constructor chaining. What is a static variable? Static variable in Java is completely different from static variable in C. In Java, when you declare a variable as static or a method as static, it is tied to the class and not to the object. So when you create an object of this class, still all the objects point to the same variable which is tied to the class. What is an instance variable? In Java, when a variable is declared in a class and it is not static, it is called as an instance variable. An instance variable belongs to an object. What are the access modifiers in Java? Java supports 4 different levels of access modifiers. One, public. When a variable or a method is declared public, it is accessible to all classes across the board. When a variable is declared as private, it is only visible to the class in which it has been defined. If you declare the variable or method as protected, then it is visible to all the subclasses and within the same package. Finally, if you declare without any access modifier, then it means it's default. Default means it's visible across the entire package. These are the access modifiers in Java. They are also called access specifiers in certain cases. What is the use of super keyword? Super keyword, when it is called from a child class, it refers to the parent class's variable or method. If you call the super method, super with open bracket and close bracket, in the child class's constructor, then it would call the parent class's constructor. If you do super dot variable, then it would refer to the parent class's instance variable. What is the use of this keyword? This keyword refers to the current object that is being referenced. So if you say this dot variable name, then it refers to the current object's instance variable. If you use this and then you call a method, it refers to the current object's constructor method. This keyword is mostly used in the parameterized constructor, especially when the name of the argument is same as the name of the instance variable. In that case, we would call it as this dot variable name equal to the parameter name. So it would assign the value of the parameter to the instance variable of the class. What is a singleton class? A singleton class is a class where it allows only single instance of an object to be created for that particular class. If you try to create more than one object, it would restrict. This is very useful if at all you have to control access to a socket or database. In that case, singleton class is very useful. Does Java use call by value or call by reference when calling a method? Java always uses call by value. It never uses call by reference. So when you pass a primitive variable, it would pass the value of that variable and it will not pass the reference to that variable. So within the function, if you modify something, that would not be reflected in the main program. When you pass an object, again, the reference of the object is sent to the function. Even in that case, the copy of the reference is what is being sent to the function and not the original object itself. That's what is the difference between call by value and call by reference. What is encapsulation? Explain with an example. Encapsulation is a property by which the data and the methods within a class are secured. How does it happen? So you use private variables for the data that you want to protect, and you allow access to those private variables only through getter and setter methods. So if you want to set a value for a particular variable, it has to be set only through the setter methods. These methods are public methods, and you would do any checks you want to make before you update that variable. Let's take an example of age. You want to set a student's age in a class, and age is a variable which is a class variable or instance variable. Now, if you allow that variable to be directly updated, someone could set the age as 1000, which we don't want to happen. So what we would do is we'll make that variable as private int age, and we'll have a method called setAge, which is public, and in that method we'll make a check to see if the age is less than 0 or the age is greater than 120, then throw an error, else set the age with the value that has been passed. So given that you have done this, any user who is trying to set a value which is outside the range would be thrown an error, and he would not be able to directly access the variable to set the value because it's a private value. And given that he or she would be able to only update it through the setter method, the setter method would check whether it is within the range and only then allow that value to be set. That's why encapsulation is very powerful to ensure that the data is within valid limits. This is how data protection happens and method protection happens in encapsulation. What is inheritance? Explain inheritance with an example. Inheritance is a property by which the parents, variables and methods, basically the state and behavior of the parent class, is passed on to the child. This is similar to the real world where the child inherits the genes of the parent. Now let's take a real example. Let's take we have a watch which is a normal analog watch, and you want to make a digital watch out of it. So you can have a normal watch which will have date, time and all these fields and methods to calculate the date and time. Now you can have another watch called the digital watch which would inherit all the properties of watch, and then it could have a digital display. So the time, date and hour, minute, seconds, everything could be displayed in digital. This is inheritance. What are the different types of inheritance that are supported in Java? Java supports single inheritance, multi-level inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, hybrid inheritance. Java does not support multiple inheritance because it would lead to a diamond problem. Single inheritance is where you have a parent class and a child class. In multi-level inheritance, you will have a parent class, child class, and the child class would be a parent for another class. In hierarchical inheritance, you would have one parent class and have two children under it. That's hierarchical. In hybrid inheritance, it would be a combination of multi-level inheritance and hierarchical inheritance. Multiple inheritance is not supported in Java. Multiple inheritance means there are two parents to a child. That's multiple inheritance. What is multiple inheritance? Is it supported in Java? Why is it not supported in Java? So we had probably looked at part of it in the earlier question. When there are two parents and there is one common child which is trying to inherit from two parents, it's called multiple inheritance. It is not supported in Java. Why it is not supported in Java is, assume that there is one parent class from which there is a method called run, and there are two children for it, and each of them have their own implementation of the run function. And you have one more class which is below this, which is subclass, and which is trying to inherit from the two children that we already have, and it's trying to invoke that method run. So Java would have a confusion as to which is the method to call. This is called the diamond problem. That's why Java does not support multiple inheritance. What is polymorphism? Explain with an example. Polymorphism is a concept where it is like an object taking many forms. Polymorphism mainly has two major concepts. One is called compile time polymorphism. The other one is runtime polymorphism. Compile time polymorphism has operator overloading and method overloading. Operator overloading is not supported in Java. Method overloading is the only one supported. Method overloading means a single method which could have different parameters. Say one method could have a and b or two integers as parameters, and another method with the same name, say add method, has two integers and add method having three integers. So this is same method having different arguments and returning integer, which is the total. This is method overloading. So a caller of this function need not worry about the number of arguments passed. This is method overloading. This is also called compile time polymorphism, static binding, early binding. All these refer to the same thing. Why it's called compile time polymorphism is because this polymorphism defines when the method has to be called. If the method binding to that particular object happens during compile time, it is called compile time polymorphism. In runtime polymorphism, you have method overriding. Method overriding means it needs inheritance where there is a parent class and child class. And in the child class, a method with the same name is there and same number of arguments. So when you override it, that is, you give a different implementation of that same method in the child compared to the parent, it is called method overriding. For example, we talked about analog watch and digital watch. You could have an analog display which displays using hour hand, minute hand and second hand in the parent class. And in the child class, you could override it, that is, override the implementation and have a new definition in the digital watch where you could have hours, minutes and seconds displayed in digital form. This is called runtime polymorphism or late binding, because which method to call is determined during runtime and not during compile time. That's why it's called runtime polymorphism. Which of the following methods can you override? Private, static, final. So actually the answer is none of these can be overridden. A private method cannot even be derived in the subclass, so you cannot override it. A static method would mean it's without an object, so there is no point overriding it. Final means that's the final implementation, so you cannot override in the child class. What is upcasting? Upcasting is a concept in polymorphism, in runtime polymorphism. So there is a base class reference variable that is being created, and if it references to the child class object, it is called as upcasting. What is an abstract class? What is abstraction? Abstraction is a concept where you hide implementation detail. Java supports abstraction through abstract classes. An abstract class is a class which is defined using the abstract keyword in front of the class. So abstract class can have abstract methods and non-abstract methods. What it means is an abstract method is something which does not have a definition, it just has the prototype. So abstract class can have abstract methods as well as non-abstract methods. So abstract class cannot be instantiated because you don't have definition for certain functions. So that's why abstract class cannot be instantiated. What is the difference between abstract class and interface? Abstract class is defined with abstract keyword, and abstract class can have abstract and non-abstract method. Interface is created using the interface keyword. It has only abstract methods. It does not have any non-abstract methods. Interface is implemented using the implements keyword. An abstract class actually can be extended using the extends keyword. That is, if you want to use an abstract class to define a real class, then you need to use the extends keyword and create a subclass. And if you want to actually implement an interface, you have to use the implements keyword and then create a subclass based on it. In both abstract class and interface, you cannot instantiate objects based on them. Can an interface have a constructor? No, an interface cannot have a constructor because you cannot create an object directly based on the interface. What is the use of finalize keyword? Finalize is the method in Java which is used to perform cleanup operations. This is before the object is garbage collected. Before that, the finalize method is called. Finalize method is actually defined in the object class, which is the parent of all classes. So thank you for going through the questions. These are the most important questions which are usually asked in Java OOPS interviews. Now, the concepts for some of these were not explained in detail. As you know, we have a Java OOPS channel where all these questions are discussed in detail. The concepts are explained in detail with hands-on examples. Here the objective is to explain to you how you would respond back if at all this particular question comes in an interview. So this is verbatim how you would respond back to the interviewer if that question is asked. So all the details, the concepts for your understanding have been posted in another playlist, which is Java OOPS playlist that you have in the same channel. You can go through that, which would provide you greater detail. I hope this session was interesting and informative. If you have any questions or comments or any corrections that you have, you can feel free to post it in the comment section. Thank you.